In this episode of Cycling Tours, I will explore the cycling network within the western sector of Punggol. Hello folks, Transit Evolution is here again to bring you a fresh and thorough look at the cycling network in Punggol West. But before we get to the main street layout, pardon me for a moment as I kickstart this video with a look at the cycling path loop wrapping around One Punggol. Now, One Punggol is Singapore's third community hub, after our Tampines hub and Heartbeat at Bedok. As with other community hubs, this one aims to bring together multiple agencies and provide facilities and services under one roof. These include a multi-purpose hall, a community garden, a senior care centre, a child care centre, a hawker centre, and most importantly, Punggol Regional Library. Ample bicycle parking is provided on the ground floor. The shared path then descends to a roadside cycling path next to Sam Kee LRT station on the West Loop. Now, you may be wondering where the sports facilities are located, since in the case of Bedok and Tampines, they were indeed integrated into the community hub. For Punggol though, the facilities are located separately from the community club, in a Punggol Regional Sports Centre to my left, including a 5,000-seat football stadium, a 5-pool swimming complex, halls for badminton and basketball courts, and gym amongst other things. Bizarrely, the cycling path is placed wrongly to the footpath, and is clearly designed to simply wrap around the development along Sentul Crescent and Punggol Drive, therefore leading to nowhere. I shall now travel along what I call the Punggol Station Link, along this shared path which will eventually lead me back to Punggol MRT station. While people can take one stop on the LRT to get here, there's certainly not enough capacity in the people mover system to shuttle people between the town centre and the community hub. I suppose this is why a walking and cycling path is built to give people an option to walk or cycle here instead. I'm now back in the town centre at Waterway Point, where I pass the acid-emanating commuters from Punggol Station of the North East MRT line. I suppose this is around the time when I would start to properly cover the cycling network in the western sector of Punggol. Just as a reminder, in case you did not watch the video for the eastern sector, I will be covering the Matilda and Punggol Town Centre subzones today, or neighbourhoods 2 and 3 of Punggol. Of course, it may not be easy to understand what this means, since in common parlance, Punggol is known to have 11 different districts. If we go by that in the video for the eastern sector, I've already covered the Crescent, Punggol Field East, Punggol Central, and Waterway East districts. Today's video will mainly cover the southern half of Punggol Downtown, Matilda, Punggol Field West, and Waterway West districts. Since there will be no videos for the northern sector, we'll not see the cycling paths in Canal, North Shore, Punggol Point, or the northern half of the Punggol Downtown district. For now though, I'll be travelling along the same pathways which I did for the eastern sector, along Punggol Central and Punggol Road. I'll talk again when the paths diverge, when I make a right turn into the western half of Punggol Field, near the 7-minute mark of this video. I'm now passing the Privé condominium, which creatively means private in French, where we have a shared path on the north side along the entire stretch of this roadway. One thing that's interesting about the western half of Punggol Field when compared to the east is that the public housing precincts here are newer and are hence named. Because of the greedy street layout in this town and the dizzying number of estates I have to pass through along the way, every roadway I travel through may look and feel the same. In an attempt to make this video less boring, I'll try to name the housing precincts I pass along the way, which may give residents living in Punggol a better picture of where I am. Currently, I'm passing Punggol Arcadia, with Edgefield Secondary to my left, opposite the LRT viaduct. This is a very peculiar part of Punggol which is left poorly served by the LRT station, with no stops for 3 street blocks, perhaps because we are not very far from Punggol MRT station, and there's an expectation that people will either take the few bus services in the vicinity or walk to the MRT station. When I cross Punggol Place, I pass Masjid Al Islah, the only mosque in Punggol, located conveniently close to the town centre. If you walk to the other side of Punggol Regalia and Punggol Residences to my right, you will already reach the MRT station and bus interchange. Amidst this web of LRT viaducts branching in all directions, you will notice the presence of a pedestrian pathway to my right, leading to a mid-block crossing to my left. Residents of Punggol Crest, Ripples, Sails and Waves will find this the most direct route to take to get to the MRT station. It's also worth noting that there are plans for a cycling bridge across the Tampines Expressway beneath the LRT corridor to connect cyclists in Punggol with Sengkang through the Sengkang Sculpture Park, although this probably will not happen that soon. Crossing Punggol Walk, another street leading to a cul-de-sac on its southern end, I pass Punggol Green Primary on the opposite side, with the Punggol Sapphire Precinct to my right. At this stage, I'm leaving the Punggol Field West District and entering Matilda. But before I can do so, I have to cross the intersection with Punggol Way twice. That's because the cycling path along Punggol Field switches from the north to the south side of the roadway as I enter this newer district of Punggol. Unfortunately, such a switch is done in one of the busiest traffic intersections in Punggol. Unlike the typical 4-phase traffic cycle used in a typical intersection, the one used here has even more phases to try and accommodate the high traffic volumes, trying to get to Tampines Expressway. Pedestrians and cyclists therefore have to wait an even longer duration just to get past this unpleasant intersection to head further to Matilda. And perhaps this is why you don't see many cyclists here. The sheer number of precincts in Punggol sure does test the imagination of the housing board in finding unique pronounceable names for each precinct. I'm now passing Matilda Portico, featuring 218 Sumang Walk, a dedicated commercial block with an eating house, a supermarket, and shops. Perhaps this is why it's considered a good idea to route the cycling path through here, as it is thought that the cyclist volumes will bring more business here. Further along, we pass the Veranda at Matilda and Matilda Sun Deck, two public housing precincts which follow quite a common trend in Punggol, with a 2-story car park occupying the entire side area of each precinct beneath a landscape deck where the playground and fitness stations are located. Such designs are often increasingly used to hide car infrastructure away from the residents living in each precinct when compared to the open-air car parks of the past. But it does hide away the fact that there are more and more parking lots for each side area, given existing parking provision standards and the increased housing density of newer flats. I'm now travelling along Sumang Crescent, where you see a few greenfield sites to my right, waiting to be developed in the future. I will now take a break from the cycling path network so that you can have a look at the stretch of the park connector network that's in the area involved in this video. It's good that there's an access point to the park connector through Sumang Lane. I'm now travelling northbound from the town border with Sengkang right at the Tampines Expressway along Punggol Park Connector, which was built to follow the eastern shoreline of Sungai Punggol. This park connector is segregated into a footpath and a park connector path, the latter being demarcated with two red lines. As per convention, the footpath is placed closer to the waterway so that walkers can better enjoy the view of the waterway. But with such dense vegetation here, I doubt that's going to happen. Now, because this is a park connector, it's absolutely important to watch out for animals along the way. You can see over here that I have to make a sudden detour around a rooster and a hen, freaking out by the presence of a monitor lizard. Up ahead, there's yet another monitor lizard. No otters today though. You see, park connectors aren't just meant to be a means of recreation for joggers, cyclists, and rollerbladers. They link parks and nature areas, supporting biodiversity and providing food and shelter for wildlife. Given the interesting variety of flora and especially fauna which we see here, I'd say that the northeastern riverine loop, the one I'm currently travelling along, mainly comprising of Sungai Serangoon, Sungai Punggol and Punggol Waterway, has done a pretty good job at this. We are now turning into a park connector along the southern bank of my waterway at Punggol, unveiled in 2007 under a Punggol 21 Plus plan and completed in 2011. Just for context, under Punggol 21 Plus, Sungai Punggol and Sungai Serangoon were dammed to form Punggol and Serangoon reservoirs, with this 4.2-kilometer waterway dug to connect the two rivers. The dream is to have resort-style Venice in Singapore housing, a town centre by the waterway, and recreational amenities like water sports such as kayaking, parks with jogging and cycling tracks, and alfresco dining. All of these recreational amenities did materialize in some ways and form, although the jogging and cycling track is probably the one that is the most accessible to the public. We are also passing Waterway Terrace at this juncture, two of the earliest public housing precincts that were built along the waterway, completed in 2015, with a unique hexagonal block design. Unfortunately, it was also known for plenty of maintenance issues, with dirty facades that were full of mold before they were repainted. Further up ahead, we pass Waterway Point. You will notice the presence of ample bicycle parking over here, used by many people living along the waterway as a means of last mile travel. That's great! The flooring also uses a more bumpy texture, which encourages cyclists to slow down a little. At this point though, you will likely also realize that this park connector is pretty hard to access from the street level. Earlier, we crossed under Punggol Way and Punggol Walk, and in both cases, there isn't a seemingly obvious pathway which you can use to get to the cycling paths on the bridge. Once again, this isolates the park connector network from the cycling path network here, which means that if you choose to cycle here as a means of commute, you have to practically pick between one of two competing cycling networks. The more limited network on a faster and smoother park connector versus this more expensive network on a slower and bumpier cycling path. Of course, cycling along the park connector also comes with its occasional set of unique challenges. For example, pardon the few maintenance vehicles which I have to pass today, as there are tree pruning operations along this park. At the start of the video, I travelled on cycling paths wrapping around One Punggol, where I mentioned the presence of a future Punggol Regional Sports Centre. Along the waterway, we encounter it once again, right after we pass Safra Punggol. It goes to show how useful the park connectors along this waterway are to enable people to walk or cycle between various points of the town centre, as not just a means of recreation, but a form of commute as well. Such functions are inherently intertwined in linear parks like this, located in a dense, built-up environment. Finally, as I approached New Punggol Road, I found an exit to the street level through this windy path here. It sure is interesting to note that because the waterway is grade separated from the street level in Punggol, a cyclist who switches between the two cycling networks likely have to experience quite a lot of elevation changes when compared to many other cycling towns, even though Punggol is a very flat town. Currently, there are no cycling paths along this stretch of New Punggol Road, the main roadway leading into Punggol Digital District. You will catch a glimpse of it shortly, with office buildings from the Jurong Town Corporation's business park integrated with the Singapore Institute of Technology, but it is still a construction zone as of the time of this video's recording, and I will not be heading there. Instead, I will move on to New Punggol Road, yet another east-west axis with cycling paths along both sides of a 6-lane road, which was once designated as a semi-expressway. There's remarkably little going on here, since the roadway is directly next to the land for Punggol Waterway Park, making for a fairly smooth ride. I'm about to cross Sentul Walk, an unopened road located directly beneath Tagley LRT station, an LRT station that is 22 years old as of the time of this video's recording, which remains closed, having never seen a single day of passenger service. This is where it's worth noting that, unlike the Bukit Panjang LRT, which was shoehorned into an existing built-up area, the Punggol LRT system was built way ahead of the town's development. For a very long time, this LRT station sits in the middle of a jungle. However, with Punggol Digital District nearing completion, this LRT station probably will not remain closed for long. The land zoned as a park for the Punggol Waterway Park is much more substantial than the measly strip of park connected land surrounding the waterway. Even as I near the intersection with Punggol Way, the land to my immediate left is still designated as parkland. Given that this is the case, the journey on this cycling path along Punggol North Avenue will likely remain smooth without interruptions by access roads for a very long time. Punggol North Avenue serves as a dividing line between the Waterway West and North Shore districts, or more traditionally, neighbourhoods 3 and 4 of Punggol. The roadway was built to provide a road connection between Pasir Ris and Seletar, which provides another road link towards Yishun. As I approach a mid-block bicycle crossing, I merge smoothly from this cycling path back onto Punggol Park Connector, where we'll get a look at the shoreline of Sungai Punggol as I travel southwards next to Punggol Bayview, unencumbered by greenery. I now approach Punggol Waterway Park, where the park connector curves towards the waterway. Not to worry, I can cross to the other side by using Jewel Bridge, which provides good views of sunsets along Punggol Reservoir. Like the other bridges crossing the waterway, Jewel Bridge was built to cross it at a higher elevation to accommodate water sports activities in the waterway towards Sungai Punggol and Sungai Serangoon. We had a great time looking at the key cycling routes along Punggol Park Connector, Punggol Waterway Park, and Punggol North Avenue. It's now time to return to the more built-up areas of Punggol, to the smaller roads and streets which people live along. Earlier, I entered the waterway through an access point along Sumang Lane, and this will be how I exit it as well. Access is a little tricky as there are many zigzaggy ramps to traverse through, but it is doable on a bicycle. I'm now travelling through the Matilda district along Sumang Lane, a rare example of a two-lane street with a pretty substantial length, serving high-density public housing in Punggol. The housing precincts of Matilda Court and Matilda Edge lay to my right. I do find it interesting how the blocks at the corner of both precincts, near 231 Sumang Lane, feature shops with a food court and supermarket, therefore creating a synergic cluster of shops and facilities that is shared between residents of both precincts. Because of the way the driveways are laid though, it may be a little difficult to access those shops from the cycling path. Now, the Matilda district is interesting in that it was probably one of the first new development areas of Singapore, which was built with a cycling path on one side of the road, right from the start. This was done during a period when Singapore was transitioning from a grey to a red-coloured design in its cycling paths, which resulted in quite a neither here nor there look in the paths here. They feature the current cycling logo icon, which, just so you know, is different from the standard ones used overseas to discourage speeding. Previously, an older bicycle icon dating back to colonial times would be used. Sumang Lane is a dead-end street, and such a design discourages through traffic. This is a missed opportunity to introduce filtered permeability to the street. The cycling path doesn't continue here. Instead, it just comes to an abrupt end. It would have been great if there was a cycling path connection along the covered linkway in Matilda Edge, leading to Punggol Way, to give cyclists an option to take a more direct route into Punggol Way and out of this estate. Instead, I'll have to take the footpath, and we'll continue our journey along Sumang Walk. We are now travelling along Sumang Walk, a street that is unbefitting of its suffix. Walk implies good walkability, but the environment here is pretty hostile to pedestrians. Not only is a walk here neither interesting nor meaningful, but it can also be pretty dangerous. There are hardly any mid-block crossings in the vicinity of bus stop pairs, so residents living in Punggol Topaz and Opal to my right will have to cross the roadway on their own accord, or make a detour of hundreds of meters to the nearest junction. Up ahead, I cross a three-way intersection which will be converted into a four-way shortly, providing a fourth way for motorists to get to and from the Tampines Expressway, this time through Seletar Link to the west. Because of the town structure being flanked by water on three sides, the only way to leave Punggol by car or public transport is traditionally through the south, where expressway interchanges are a significant bottleneck. This is why traffic congestion is quite a long-standing problem in Punggol, despite of street designs that prioritize the movement of the automobile. Such projects are not necessarily a bad thing, but they should be done in a manner that accounts for not just traffic flow, but the needs of public transport users and active mobility as well. Meanwhile though, do notice a rare access point into Punggol Waterway Park from Sumang Link to my left. Such access points are critical to ensure that the Punggol Waterway is a good trunk route for cycling that is accessible to more residents in Punggol, thereby encouraging the uptake of active mobility in this town. Still, because this cycling path is routed to the west side of Sumang Walk instead of its east, many of the public housing precincts to my right have zero direct access to cycling infrastructure at the street level. All they get is a measly footpath. Cycling is already unpleasant in such an environment, and the lack of cycling paths makes it even less practical here. Neither is walking pleasant, as traffic calming schemes have not been implemented along this 50 km/h street. This is a fatal accident waiting to happen, and in fact, it already did. In 2022, a driver ran over and killed a secondary school student at this intersection with Sumang Link. Once again, I meet an abrupt end to the cycling path. I don't expect many people to use a network with so many dead ends. I shall now pass Punggol Cove Primary and make my way along Sumang Link to show you a sister north-south road further east, Punggol Walk. Like Sumang Walk, Punggol Walk isn't as pedestrian-friendly as the name implies and probably don't deserve such names. Passing Punggol Park Vista, I cross Sentul Crescent and make my way along Punggol Walk. A red cycling path has been painted along Punggol Walk, making a crossing over Punggol Waterway with a bridge, and providing another way to access Waterway Point, the shopping mall at the town centre, away from the park connector below. Once you reach Waterway Point though, things get a little dangerous. There are informal crossings as I make my way across access roads leading to the loading and unloading bay and an underground car park. When traffic volumes are high, a cyclist going straight along this road will have to wait a long time to give way to vehicles trying to enter and exit. It's things like this that deter active mobility, and ideally they should be prioritized across such access roads with zebra crossings. Of course, the best way to make such conflict points safer is to eliminate them in the first place, which you can do by using Punggol Waterway Park to access the mall. But of course, that's not always possible. The path along Punggol Walk continues further south of Punggol Central as a shared path. The construction project here does make the process of crossing this arterial road a little less pleasant though. As I travel southwards amongst this mess, I want to point out a distinctive feature of the condominium to my right, a treasure trove. Before Punggol was a new town, there was a colonial-era bungalow by the name of Matilda House, built in 1902. The land it sat on was acquired by the government in 1985, and it sat abandoned for a very long time, with rumours about spirits preventing the demolition of the house. It was eventually gazetted for conservation in the year 2000 and has since been adapted as a clubhouse of a treasure trove. This house, named after the mother of its original owner, has since influenced the name of an entire housing district in Punggol. I am now back along Punggol Field. It's now time for me to give you a look at the shared path along the next north-south road, Punggol Way, which is so new that I had to re-record some parts of this video, as the paths weren't completed the first time I came here at the end of March. The shared path in Punggol Way extends to Punggol West Flyover, providing Punggol's first ever intertown cycling option to Sengkang, away from the park connector system. However, this will only be progressively implemented from the end of 2024, where the first phase of Sengkang Cycling Town is completed. For now, this journey on the Punggol side is not pleasant. This stretch of Punggol Way has been widened from 6 to 8 lanes back in 2018, and the result is that the shared path has been pushed to a very narrow strip of land, next to the property line of condominiums like Ecopolitan and Twin Waterfalls. There's not even enough space for a proper bus stop bypass. This is not desirable, and I hope that when the new road bridge to Sentul Link is opened, consideration can be given to returning this stretch of Punggol Way at least to its previous 6-lane state before the road widening, therefore providing more room for walking and cycling infrastructure. It can't be that every thoroughfare into Punggol has to be heavily dominated by motor vehicles to this extent. The cycling path continues along the east side of Punggol Way, where I pass Punggol Sapphire and Punggol Emerald precincts, and this is where I travel beneath Sutek LRT station. Like many of the older cycling paths in Punggol, the footpath becomes laughably small whenever I pass a covered linkway. It will take a while to rectify such mistakes of the past. Crossing Punggol Central, the cycling path turns red once again, where I pass Valor Primary and Waterway terraces, making yet another crossing across Punggol Waterway Park. Honestly though, it's quite unlikely that residents along Waterway terraces would use this bike path. The park connector provides a significantly superior experience. I've passed Sumang LRT station earlier and am about to cross Sumang Link. I'll have to cut this video to another one taken at a later date, because as of the time of the original video's recording back at the end of March, the cycling path along Punggol Way is still a work in progress. However, the path near Nibong LRT station has since been completed in April. With its completion, the cycling path network in Punggol West looks nearly complete on the map, with every roadway having a cycling path on one side of the roadway. It may not provide the best experiences, but it's certainly there. Approaching Punggol North Avenue, I want to note that the path along Punggol Way switches to the west side further north to better serve the North Shore district. This is certainly an inconvenience for those using the network here to get between the two districts. Anyway, I've covered the second last cycling path in this video and will now make a beeline back to the town centre at Punggol Central, where I cover my last cycling path and give a summary of how I find cycling in Punggol West. You may notice that the cycling path network is a lot more comprehensive in the western half of Punggol, and that is indeed the case. While much of the cycling network in Punggol East dates back to the initial 8.8 km long network, which was completed back in 2016, much thought has been given to filling in the existing gaps in Punggol West, such as along Punggol Walk and Sumang Walk. Some of the works here are so recent that if I uploaded this video 2 weeks ago, it would not have been possible for me to show you the paths in a completed state. Over the coming years, you can expect more work to complete the cycling network in Punggol East, and I'm looking forward to that. However, unless something fundamentally changes with the roads and streets of Punggol, it's unlikely that cycling away from the four rivers of Punggol will be a pleasant experience for commuting. Yes, the routes are direct, but regular intersections of big roads make for plenty of starts and stops at oversized intersections that slow a bicycle down while wearing the cyclist out, since signalization will be necessary as opposed to raised zebra crossings. This is fine as a means of exercise, but not so much for regular commutes, where comfort is key and you don't want people waiting too long to cross the road in the hot and humid weather here. As the transportation infrastructure improves, both for motorists and public transport users, I hope that excess road space can be reclaimed along the older roads and streets to make room for properly separated bike infrastructure, and more importantly, to inject greenery that makes a walk or a cycling trip more attractive, not just along pedestrian pathways leading to common greens within estates, but also along vehicular conduits as well. Now this journey along the last leg of Punggol Central sure is amongst the least pleasant, as the pathways are narrowed to make room for construction activity. It's made even less pleasant by the amount of vehicular traffic trying to enter Waterway Point. I can't help but wonder who are these motorists driving into the shopping mall at the town centre, and why they chose to drive here when plenty of alternative transportation options exist, from the MRT and LRT station to the bus interchange and the Punggol Waterway. They make getting to the mall on foot or bike along the pavement extremely hazardous, since their movement are prioritized over straight moving foot traffic. However it is, I now come to the end of this episode of Cycling Tours. Feel free to leave your thoughts on the expanding cycling network of Punggol in the comment section below. Remember to hit subscribe and the bell if you have not done so, and consider supporting me using the Super Thanks function of YouTube. This is Transit Evolution signing off.